They say every tall building in the city has a story, not of the architect, not of the owner of broken bar, but of the hands that built it. Hands that bleed, crack, and yet never stop working. This is the story of one such man, Rafiq, a laborer who came to the city with nothing but a heart full of dreams and a pair of calloused hands. The morning sun rose over Karachi's skyline, painting the steel and dust with golden light. Rafiq wiped the sweat from his forehead, even though it was barely 7 a.m. He wore an old grey shirt, torn near the sleeves, and shoes that had seen more rain than leather should. He stood at the construction site gate, waiting for the supervisor to call his name. "Supervisor, Rafiq. You're here early again." Rafiq, smiling faintly, "Early men get early bread, sir." The other workers laughed, half admiring his spirit, half pitying it. Rafiq had been working at that site for almost 3 years. He lived in a small rented room near the railway station, a room with cracked walls, a single fan, and a small picture of his mother taped above his bed. She had passed away 5 years ago, back in the village. Since then, Rafiq had no one waiting for him, only memories, and the dream that one day he would earn enough to open a small workshop of his own. But dreams cost more than money. They cost life itself sometimes. Rafiq sat under a half-built wall, opening his tiffin. 2 dry chapatis, 1 small piece of onion, and salt. Worker 1, Rafiq, "Bye, you eat like a saint. Don't you ever get tired?" Rafiq chuckles softly, "I get tired, brother, broken bar, but hunger doesn't wait. I eat what keeps me standing." Worker 2, "Why don't you go back to your village? At least you'll have peace there." Rafiq, "Peace doesn't build roofs, my friend. Work does." They fell silent. In Rafiq's tone, there was no bitterness, only quiet endurance. Every night after work, Rafiq would walk to a tea stall under a broken streetlight. He would sit there for hours, sipping his lukewarm tea, watching people drive past, clean suits, loud music, laughter echoing in their cars. Sometimes he'd smile, sometimes he'd close his eyes and imagine himself behind those windows. Not out of jealousy or broken bar, but hope. One evening, dark clouds gathered over the city. The foreman warned everyone to leave early. But Rafiq stayed behind. There was a section of the pillar he wanted to finish. "Foreman, Rafiq. Leave it, yar. The rain's coming." Rafiq, "Just 10 more minutes, sir. If I finish this today, tomorrow's work will be easier." Lightning cracked. The wind grew wild. Dust filled the air. Still, Rafiq kept his focus. He had no umbrella, no raincoat, only faith in his work. That night, when he finally reached his room drenched, he found water leaking through the ceiling. He placed a small bucket under it, sat on his bed, and whispered. Rafiq to himself, "He built roofs for others, a broken bar, but mine still leaks." He laughed, not out of humor, but helplessness. Then, with a tired smile, he whispered again, "Someday, this will change." Weeks passed. The contractor announced a new high-rise project, one that would take 2 years to complete. The pay was better, and Rafiq immediately signed up. He told himself, "This one will be different. This one will build my dream." The days turned into months. Rafiq became known for his reliability. If someone was sick, he'd take their shift. If someone was in debt, he'd lend them his week's savings. He was poor, but his heart was richer than most. One afternoon, while returning from the site, Rafiq saw a little boy selling flowers near a traffic signal. The boy couldn't have been more than 7. "Boy, sir, 1 rose, only 10 rupees." "Rafiq, who are you selling for?" "Boy, my mother's sick." I turned for her. Rafiq smiled softly and bought the whole bunch. Rafiq, keep the money. Go home early today. Boy smiling, thank you, uncle. Rafiq held those flowers close as he walked home. He placed one by his mother's photo and whispered, see, I'm a broken bar he reminds me of. The city never noticed Rafiq had the man who built its walls, painted its ceilings, and strengthened its foundations. But the people who worked beside him they knew. They called him by not out of formality, but respect. He had become a symbol of quiet strength, the kind that doesn't make noise, yet holds everything together. It was a humid evening when fate decided to test him. The workers were rushing to complete the upper floors before the inspection. The scaffolding was unstable, the lights were dim, but deadlines don't wait for safety. Rafiq climbed the steel rods with his usual calmness. His co-worker called out, "Hey, co-worker, Rafiq by, it's not safe. Wait till morning." "Rafiq, we've done this 100 times, don't worry." But life doesn't count. It chooses its moment. A loud creak echoed through the night. The scaffold gave way. And in a flash of lightning and screams, Rafiq fell from the 10th floor, down into the dark, wet ground below. The site froze. Tools dropped. Men shouted. Rain poured again. Rafiq lay unconscious, covered in dust and blood. His hands, the same hands that built so much, were now trembling, broken. The doctor sighed. "Doctor, he's alive, a broken bar, but barely." Days turned into weeks. He remained in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling fan turning slowly. His body couldn't move much. But his mind still dreamed. Rafiq weakly whispering, "Maybe God wanted me to rest." A nurse smiled softly. "Nurse, you must have worked very hard." Rafiq, "Yes, a broken bar, but I never worked for myself." Tears welled in his eyes. "Maybe that's where I went wrong." A few days later, one of his co-workers came to visit. "Co-worker boy," the contractor said, "they'll help with your expenses. We'll all contribute too." Rafiq smiles faintly, "Keep your money, brother. Spend it on your family." Co-worker, "But what about you?" Rafiq, "I've built enough walls. Maybe now, I'll rest behind one." The co-worker held his hand and wept. But Rafiq, he was calm. Peaceful. He looked out the hospital window, at the half-finished building he had been working on. Its top floors glistened under the sunset. And he whispered, "Beautiful, isn't it?" Aftermath, moral. When Rafiq's heart stopped, the city didn't notice. The cars still honked. The people still hurried. Life moved on as if nothing had changed. But for the few who knew Huma broken bar, everything did. The next morning, the construction site felt different. The workers gathered near the cement bags, silent. No one spoke for a long time. The foreman, the same man who often shouted at Rafiq, stood quietly, holding his helmet against his chest. Foreman softly, he was the only one who never complained. Worker 1, he worked for us all. Even when he had nothing. Worker 2: he taught me how to lay bricks straight. A broken bar said walls should stand like men, honest and firm. The foreman cleared his throat. Foreman, we'll build a small plaque for him on the wall he worked on last. His name should stay here. They all nodded. That day, none of them took a lunch break. They worked in silence. Each stroke of their hammer, each lift of a brick felt heavier than before. Rafiq had left nothing behind, no family, no savings, not even proper clothes. But he left something greater: respect. And the quiet reminder that even the smallest lives can leave the biggest marks. A week later, the contractor called the workers in. He was a wealthy man, always dressed in suits, barely noticing his laborers before. But something in him had changed too. Contractor: I heard about Rafiq, a broken bar, he worked here for years. Worker: yes, sir. Never missed a day. Contractor pauses, and he died building my dream. He took a deep breath, removed his watch, and placed it on the table. Contractor: from now on, every worker here will get health insurance and proper safety gear. I can't bring him back, but I won't let his story. Sometimes one man's tragedy becomes the seed for many others' protection. Rafiq didn't die in vain. His silence moved a heart that money couldn't. Months passed. The skyscraper Rafiq had worked on finally stood complete, a tall, shining, proud. At the entrance, just beside the main door, a small marble plaque read, "Dedicated to Rafiq, whose hands built dreams for others." Every morning, workers passing by would touch that plaque before starting their shift. It became a ritual, a reminder that their sweat wasn't invisible. One evening, a familiar figure stood before the plaque, the same flower-selling boy from months ago. Now a little older, holding a few flowers in his hands. He looked at the name carved in stone, smiled, and whispered, "You bought all my flowers that day, uncle. I never forgot." He placed a rose on the marble and said softly, "Me'll work hard to a broken bar like you." Rafiq never knew that small act of kindness would live on. But that's the beauty of true goodness, that doesn't ask to be remembered. It just is. And in the end, a broken bar that's enough. We live in a world that celebrates the rich, the famous, the powerful. But we forget the ones who make the foundations, are the ones whose sweat holds our comfort together. Rafiq's story isn't just about pain. It's about purpose. He never built his own dream, but he built a world where others could. And maybe that's a higher calling. When we die, we don't take our wealth, our fame, or our possessions. We only leave behind the work we've done, a broken bar, and the kindness we've given. One day, someone will stand under a roof you built a broken bar, someone will find shade under a wall you painted a broken bar, and even if they never know your name, your work will whisper you were. So, if you're struggling today, if life feels unfair, if your efforts seem invisible, remember Rafiq. Because sometimes, the quietest souls build the loudest legacies. And patience, even in pain, can build something eternal. Not all heroes wear suits. Some wear dust and calluses. If this story touched your heart, comment a respect to Rafiq below and share it so that every worker, every silent dreamer, knows they matter.